Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored with Steve Taplin.
Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored, where tech leaders drop the filters and just tell it like it is. I'm your host, Steve Taplin, a serial technology entrepreneur who's launched 30 companies, failed at 20 of those, but scaled 10 of those to success. I turned that roller coaster of a ride into my book. It's called Fail Hard, Win Big. And this is where I teach you how to turn failure into your biggest competitive advantage and how custom software played a defining role in every company win. Now I'm the CEO of Sonatify Technology. We're a nearshore software engineering firm based in the US. We help scale existing engineering teams with our proven talent. Today, we are joined by Jared Shepard out of Virginia. Jared is an Army veteran turned entrepreneur who has an amazing story. We're going to have some fun. Jared, welcome.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. So this is exciting.
You bet. Jared, if you would, tell us about your journey through serving in the Army, and thank you for your service to becoming a CEO and entrepreneur.
Yeah, the first I'll kind of address the whole thank you for the service thing, which is, it for veterans, a lot of veterans, we all kind of agree. It makes you a little uncomfortable when somebody says that to you because nobody joins the military for that, right? They join the military for obviously some level of commitment to the idea of service, but the military is a great place to learn, to have opportunity, to develop a career, to do a lot of great things, right? And most people always think, well, yeah, but you could go to war. Well, sure, that's a part of it, but that's very rarely the sole reason why somebody joins the military. But so for me, I'm the anti CEO for a million reasons. I have not started 30 companies like you, and I have not brought 10 to a level of success either. I was a high school dropout, homeless at one point, who joined the Army, the infantry, as a way to get out of what I was doing then. Because I joke, I've always been good at anything I put my mind to. When I was young, apparently I had put my mind to being a jerk, and I was good at that, and I got myself into a lot of trouble. And the Army was a way out of that for me. And being in the infantry was I loved it. It was something I still very fondly hold. In fact, if you look over my shoulder, that blue cord there is the infantry cord. It is something I still really hold important to who I am and the basis for what I became. So when somebody says thank you for your service, I always say it was my privilege because it was my privilege to serve. It's also, I promise I got more out of the military than the military got out of me. So I served for about 7 years. I was an infantry originally, and then I re-enlisted and learned IT. And that created the baseline for me to now run two different IT companies or to have two different IT companies and have established my own nonprofit as a way to give back to other veterans, to give them an opportunity to hopefully repeat or even outperform what I've been able to do.
What an amazing story, Jared. You had some challenges as a kid where you needed to find yourself, and the Army brought you that structure and education you needed. I can't think of a better story there. Tell us about, and you have multiple companies. Tell us about those.
Sure. So, it was an amazing story. So when I got out of the Army, I came right back as a contractor, and I got to be an advisor to the Army's Third Armored Corps, actually through the invasion of Iraq, and then actually I spent 15 months in Iraq as an advisor, helping build what was the initial IT infrastructure of Iraq post invasion. And then I was presented with this opportunity to go back again, but to go back building an entirely new military organization and do some really, really cool stuff from a technology standpoint, and to do it for all the right reasons. It was for an organization called JIDO, the Joint IED Defeat Organization. That was a brand new organization at the time. And the idea was go after people who were building bombs or using bombs to attack us, right? And so it's the best of all worlds. Like I got to use technology to try to stop people from either killing our guys or to really kill them and stop them from killing innocent people or soldiers that were there to try to protect the innocent. And so in the process of being exposed to that, I made a decision. I was like, I think I could probably do this better myself, and wanted to start my first company, which was called Intelligent Waves. And I went to my boss at the time, which was this legendary Army leader, a guy named General Joe Anderson and Ray Odierno. And I said, dude, this is what I wanted to do. And General Odierno, kind of to your point, comes out with this maw of a hand. He was this huge West Point lineman, just massive guy, but very soft spoken, very intelligent, and he puts his maw of a hand on my shoulder. He knew my background. He knew I was a high school dropout. He knew, what I had done and joined the army. And he says, Jared, this is the American dream, to have served your country, to now have a chance to start your own company, right? So to have come where you've come from, to have served your country, and now have a chance to start your own business. He's like, I support it. I think this is a good idea. And he said, I'll make a call to Jido and say, I think this is a good idea. And so I got to start my first company deploying really cool technology downrange to try to help affect the mission that way, intelligent waves. And it was me and one guy, a guy named Bobby, who had helped me, start the very first company. And we were really successful. And we were really
Very
successful.
nice.
They came and said, hey, we want more. So we grew. And Intelligent Waves became this great IT services company focused on helping the Department of Defense with hard IT challenges. And that was my first company.
That's amazing. Keep going. Telling us about your other ones.
Sure. So, we did that, and it was with the very first part of the Iraq War, or actually, it wasn't the first part of Iraq, it was about 2006, 2007. We were really successful at helping going after some of these bad guys who are doing this kind of things. And they said, hey, we want more. Can you make this scale? And so before you knew it, we had, I don't know, 45, 47 people across Iraq and Afghanistan helping do this really cool technology stuff. And I was in a briefing with General Odierno, and we were talking about counter IED stuff, and he gave this speech to the senior leadership that caused me to have an epiphany. And the epiphany was, like all of us, if you were born and raised here in America, we have probably all got exposure to the same kind of thing, which is this idea of the ultimate sacrifice, right? The ultimate sacrifice is what? Dying for your country, right? That's what they say. Is dying for your country is the ultimate sacrifice. And my epiphany was, I think that's a little bit of BS. I think it's bigger than that. I think the ultimate sacrifice, and this was based on a speech that General Odierno gave to his senior leaders. My epiphany was the ultimate sacrifice is bigger than that. The ultimate sacrifice could be losing a limb for your country. It could be watching a friend die on a battlefield. It could be just missing time from your children as they grow, right? But doing so for something bigger than us, right? The ultimate sacrifice is giving some part of who you are for something bigger than you, right? And those are all different forms of the ultimate sacrifice, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And so I was like, man, if my company ever really becomes this real thing, because I was still grasping with whether or not this was going to become a real company and grow up. And I didn't know what I was getting into, right? I was a brand new entrepreneur starting a company. And I was like, if this ever really becomes a thing, I'm going to find a way to give back. And that later became the genesis, which is another cool story we could talk about another time if you want. But that became the genesis for what is now Warriors Ethos, which is a nonprofit that I started with the intent of helping other veterans be successful in transition. And the reason for that is because if you hear anything bad about veterans, you know, suicide, divorce rate, unemployment rate, underemployment rate, homelessness, you name it, all these bad things about veterans. I think they're all failures in transition. They're all failures when somebody's getting out of the military and taking off the uniform. It's a failure in their ability for them to prepare, or their preparation, or what happened immediately after their transition that causes those kind of things to happen. And it could be, misdiagnosed or undiagnosed mental health problems. It could be just failures or preparation from an education, or just not realistic expectations for what transition actually is. Because what people don't talk about is all the great things of veterans, which is, veterans have one of the highest percentages of entrepreneurship, of starting their own businesses. What are we? Veteran populations, what, 1 or 2% of the United States, but we're like 8% of all small business. I mean,
That's interesting. I did not know that stat.
yeah, it's a really cool thing, right? And there's a lot of things to celebrate about the impact that veterans have on the country. And to be frank, like I'm not speaking for all veterans, but I'm speaking for a lot of them when I say this. We don't want your sympathy. We want your help, right? We want people's help so that we can go forth and take over and crush the world, right? And do great things. We don't want sympathy. We want support. We want help. And so that was the birth of Warriors Ethos. And then along the way, I get posed. We're doing this really cool stuff, and I get posed by this really hard challenge, which was, hey, can you allow a group of highly sensitive activities to occur in a place maybe where it shouldn't occur, or maybe where it's very difficult because there's bad guys that are there, or there are people there that are maligned with what we're trying to accomplish, but they still need the ability to communicate. And they should be able to communicate in a way that doesn't get them arrested, it doesn't get them identified, it doesn't get them anything else. Like, so think, I don't want to say James Bond stuff, but cool, secure stuff in hard, difficult places. And so we solved that problem. And then our epiphany was like, wait a second, we just created the ability for you to go into a country, buy a phone off of a host nation country, knowing that the phone is probably compromised and the network is compromised, and still be able to securely communicate with no risk to the enterprise. And the interesting side effect is because we already assume that your phone is already compromised, we don't want to know what's on your phone. So that means you actually get to keep all your privacy. So, like, wow, we created this secure mobile operating system that protects the enterprise and protects the user's privacy. This is way bigger than what we thought it was. So thus, that became my second company, which I decided to, when I realized the potential, the TAM, the total addressable market of what this could be, secure mobility for the world, readdressing or changing the way the edge works from a technology standpoint. I made a decision to spin it out of my other company. I hired a CEO to run Intelligent Waves, and I am now focused on growing Hypori, trying to get to the place where we can change the way that edge is defined or works.
Amazing story. Wow. Tell us more about Hypori and what you're doing there.
Sure. So Hypori is a highly secure virtual operating system. So think virtual phone or virtual tablet that runs in cloud. So it actually leverages the power of cloud, and it's accessible from any edge device, to include unsecure or compromised edge devices. So what does that really mean? Well, it means that I can use this thing to access a secure enterprise in a way in which I can interact with information as if I'm present in that enterprise. But the beauty of our technology is it only streams pixels to this device. It only streams rolling encrypted change pixels to this device. So it's never actually the data. The data never leaves the enterprise. So my device never possesses the data, which means the enterprise doesn't need to have control or visibility of this. So I get the power of cloud. I get to interact with data. I get to, build, change, shape data inside the enterprise. The data never leaves the enterprise, so it's not exposed to an attack or intercept. And I can do it from an edge device that doesn't have to be managed. So thus I keep my privacy and my flexibility. The enterprise keeps its security. Everybody's happy. But it could be way bigger than that. Think about what the power of cloud is, right? Like, what if I could give you a virtual phone that you could access from any edge device that's going to be more powerful than anything you could ever put into this form factor? Think server processing, server RAM, data center backbone type speed that I could make accessible from any edge device, not just your phone, but maybe your tablet. What about your TV on the wall? What if I could give you a better performing computer from your 72-inch TV than you could buy from Best Buy? And I could do it all for $10 a month. Who wouldn't want that second phone?
That's amazing.
Thanks.
Now, who are your typical clients with Hypori?
So it started out kind of the way I described, which was largely all defense customers, right? So it started very nichey and hard, to do defense space. Then it became larger, and now I think we are the largest BYOD platform in the Department of Defense. We are still the only enterprise-wide authorized BYOD platform in the Department of Defense. So you can use Hypori to access a government unclassified network from your personal phone with no risk to your personal phone and no risk to the government network. And that's continuing to grow. We went from, I think we had a couple hundred SaaS users last year this time, actually last year at the beginning of the year. This year, I think we're over 70,000 users today. We have Army, Air Force, Space Force, the U.S. Special Operations Command, and other agencies that are using us today. Now we're moving into the defense industrial base. So think like the big contractors that all have to be compliant with auditable requirements like CMMC. So the Lockheeds, the Northrops, those kind of companies are the companies that we're targeting now for growth in a BYOD environment, for all the same reasons, because I can allow those companies who have to ensure to the government that their information is protected, but they don't want to make you carry a second cell phone, right? And you don't want their control of your personal cell phone. Hypori is the perfect middle space. And then we're also rapidly now expanding into the other verticals that would probably logically make sense, which is highly regulated environments that need that kind of data protection. So healthcare and banking. Banking, we've had a tremendous amount of traction in the last 6 months, 8 months. And I think that's just going to continue to grow. And then as a side effect of that, it's actually European banking or OCONUS banking, because we also solve for like GDPR privacy issues and data sovereignty. So when you think about it, GDPR in Europe or data sovereignty in Europe, anytime you move data between point A to point B, you have to have the end user's consent. We don't move data anywhere. Right. And then hopefully, in the future is kind of where the vision piece of that was, I was offering was, and the epiphany came to me from my wife, of all things, when my wife came to me and said, "Hey, when can I have Hypori?" I was like, "Why would you want Hypori?" And she was like, "Look, I'm tired of worrying about losing this thing." I was like, she's like, "It's a phone, right? But it's in the cloud." And I said, "Yeah." And she's like, "Well, so if I lose this thing, it doesn't matter." Yeah. And she was like, "Cool. So why can't I take the big one with all the cameras to the kids' event and takes pictures? And then why can't I take a little flippy one with my girlfriends when I go out to dinner?" She's like, "Why can't I change this thing out the way I change my purses out?" And I was like, crap, head explosion. I'm like, this is way, way bigger than even I had initially thought. Because what if I could give you the ability to have a completely secure phone or tablet from any device anywhere, and I could make it all 10, $15 a month, right? And if my phone runs out of battery, I could ask you, I could be like, "Hey, Steve, let me borrow your phone." And you hand me your phone and I use biometrics and I log into my phone and I make a phone call and then I log back out and I hand you your phone back and I'm done.
That's very cool. Lots of possibilities there.
All kinds of great stuff.
So, what are some current projects you guys are working on?
We're doing some really cool stuff. So one of our charters always is what we call feature parity. So, we want to be able to actually have, like, if you were to go to the Apple store or if you were to go to Verizon and buy a new cell phone, what are the functions that you want in that cell phone that you rely upon that are important to you? And I want to make sure that my virtual environment can do that or better, just like anything you would go buy from one of those stores. And one of those things was messaging, right? And if you look at the dependency on messaging, whether it's WhatsApp in Europe or Signal here in the United States or just text and SMS, right? Although most of Europe has gone away from text and SMS, but just text and SMS, you want to be able to, in a secure way, communicate with other people. So recently, we're excited that we actually bought a technology that was out of the UK that was a great secure messaging platform in use in the medical community and the government over there. We have brought that technology in. We are now adapting that so that we will actually have our own secure messaging platform with our core tenants, which are no data in transit and no data at rest. So we're excited about that, being able to launch a completely standalone or integrated secure messaging platform called Hypori Secure Messaging.
Gotcha. Well, tell us about your engineering team that's pulling this stuff off. You got to have some smart people there.
Oh man, I'm a big believer in. I tell my guys all the time, like, never be the smartest person in the room because then you're the only one to walk out of the room with nothing. I try to practice that in running businesses. So I hire lots of people that are way smarter than me, and that definitely is my engineering team. We have some amazing architects, but not just architects, like visionaries when it comes to looking at the problem different. And started largely with who used to be my chief product guy. He's my right hand, Jim Cushman. He's the president of my company. His team, Eric Wayne, he's my chief engineer, and a bunch of the other folks that are over there. Being able to build out a team that looks at the problem differently, that challenges all the status quos, because again, we are challenging the status quo. Like, Gartner told us a couple of years ago, they were like, "Hey, congratulations, you guys actually are your own product category." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And they were like, and we're really sorry to tell you, you guys actually are your own product category."
That
And I
means you're
didn't,
the only one on the chart,
yeah,
right?
and I didn't understand the sense of humor of that at the time. I get it now because it is not easy being the only one that does what you do, right? And people argued like, "Well, yeah, but there's other virtualization technologies out there. There's VMware, there's, Citrix." I'm like, yeah, absolutely. How many of them are in the mobile space? How many of them are designed to work on a mobile network? How many of them are principled in no data in transit, no data at rest? And then people kind of go, "Oh, yeah, I guess you guys are the only ones." And while that's romantic to be the only ones, when you walk in the room and you're talking to a CTO or a CIO or a CISO, and you're explaining to them what you're doing, you're not saying like, "Hey, I'm Chevy and I build a better truck than Ford." You're more like, "Hey, I'm Tesla, and yeah, I have four doors and four wheels, but that's about where the similarities end." And so this is a different way of looking at the problem, right? And so getting people to be receptive to having a conversation about the problem being different than what they assumed is, that's a challenge. That's a challenge of selling a new technology.
You guys, so you guys have to do a lot of education
Yeah,
as you've created a new category.
100%. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Well, amazing stuff, to say the least.
Appreciate it.
What are some brutal lessons you've learned through this entrepreneurial journey and building companies and focused on creating a new tech category?
We could spend an hour talking about that, because I think to your earlier point, the best teacher in the world is failure. Like messing it up, and if nobody's, I have not done what you've done. I have not exited a company yet. I'm stubbornly holding on to them, but uh, I I have definitely learned and changed the way I run business over time. Right? We know some of those lessons are very basic in that, like, if you're considering starting your own company, I tell people, like, look, don't go into business with friends, because you probably won't be friends by the time the business is done.
Good advice.
Yeah, it's very disruptive to friendships. It's hard to maintain friendships in a business environment, because you have to make decisions by what's right for the business, not what's right by the friendship. Right.
Right.
Always focus on the product you're trying to produce for the end user, not the product that you're trying to produce because you think it's the right product. If you're building something in a void and you don't have end user buy-in, it's not real, right? It's something that will end up failing. And I think it was really interesting, having owned both a IT services company and a product company. People ask me what the difference is, and I tell them the nuance. If I tell you the difference, it's going to sound very nuanced, right? It's going to sound very small. But if you then think about the nuance, you realize it might as well be on other sides of the Grand Canyon, which is a IT services company helps you solve problems, helps a customer solve problems, right? A product company solves a problem. And that sounds very nuanced until you realize that an IT services company can be successful without ever having solved anything, just by helping the customer constantly work and grind through problems. And, a problem A to problem B to problem C, and whether it's staff augmentation or it's solution development, they're helping, they're with the customer, helping solve problems with the customer. And the customer will be happy with you based upon your ability to deliver that help. But as a product company, you either solve the problem you were designed to solve or you don't sell. And it's that basic, right? You either go in and say, "Hey, I'm a better widget," or I'm a widget you didn't know you needed. And if you don't buy in, then I'm either out of business or I got to go find a different widget. So they're very different environments. And I think
That's a good way of framing up the differences there.
Yeah, I think, and you'd probably be able to talk to this really well with your background. I think there's a difference in growing companies and the speed in which you grow those companies. In a professional services company, I think you can actually mentor and grow people very effectively from within. You can identify the lower level folks and teach and mentor and coach and make them higher level folks. In a product company, you need people to perform for what you hired them for. And if they can't, then you probably have to move on and find somebody else. So the operational patience of the two are very different from each other, simply because on a product company, you're burning through money for a defined time, and you either turn that company and become profitable or you fail. In a services company, as long as you're putting butts in seats and you're actually building and generating contracts and you're paying for your overhead and stuff like that, you can grow people, right? Because that becomes more sustainable.
That very good way to put it. What about, so through your journey now being an entrepreneur, you've raised capital for your ventures, and that's a learning experience in itself. What stories do you have to share with that?
There's a good book out there called Founder versus Investor. I would say is a good book to read, just to get the 101 on that before you even start. If you're going to go raise money, if you think you're going to build a product company, you're going to go raise money. I wish I had read it before I started. I think there are other great, intellectual capital books that are out there that will teach you and coach you into how to do that. Do your homework first, right? Do your homework before you go do that. I was really, really lucky. I bootstrapped Intelligent Waves from scratch and never had to raise money there. Hypori, when I decided to spin Hypori out, I was bootstrapping it too. And then the gentleman who became one of my first board members, he came and told me, he said, "Well, you're gonna have to raise money." And I was like, "Well, but what if I can bootstrap this?" And he said, "You're probably not real until somebody else has spent their money on it." I was like, whoa, like that's prolific to think about. He's like, the market just won't take you seriously until they can put their finger on who else has put their money into it. Because it gives you validation, right? Which means the intimacy or the knowledge you should have of whoever's money you're taking better be real. And you better be comfortable with who those people are, what their expectations are from their money. And it's very different, seed round, angel round, round A, round B, round C. You get different types of people at each one of those stages, and you should have an
Yep.
idea of what those people are. Risk changes, tolerance, expectations, all those kinds of things. I was very lucky in my round A. The first guy I pitched to was like, I'm all in. And guy named Ray Lane, who helped build Oracle. He was Larry Ellison's COO and then president of Oracle. And he believed in me from the very beginning. That is not a normal story, guys. Like
Man, that
if you're gonna go raise money, that is not a normal story, right? But my round B was much more difficult. I raised my round B when the market turned south, right? When nobody was raising money. And I was against the clock. And that was hard, right? And so then all of a sudden you need money. And what's that old saying, right? The best time in the world to buy a car is when you don't need one.
yeah.
Raising money is similar. The other one I've heard that's over and over again is once you start raising, you never stop. So if you think you raised your first round and now you can relax, no, man. Like it's you already have to be forward looking into the next step, as I'm sure you know.
I do have to laugh throughout my ventures. When you need the money, it's extraordinarily difficult to raise. When you don't need it, it's really easy, and you got to decide if it even makes sense to take it. But
Yeah,
kind of the nature of it. Well,
it is.
Jared, thank you for sharing your background, your stories, how you've evolved your companies. Very inspirational. Love what you're doing still, helping veterans become entrepreneurs. If there's ever anything I can do to help on that side and helping education and whether it's my book, whether it's my time, I'm offering that here on air, recording it so you can hold me to that because I believe so hardly in that mission and what you're doing there. Congrats again on what you've built. I Sounds like you haven't even scratched the surface on where you're going with it. So that's
Hope so.
exciting. Before we wrap, Jared, what no BS advice do you have for tech leaders out there who are trying to build, scale, or even just survive in these crazy times?
I mean, if you're going to try to sell a product or build a company, like I know there are a lot of people out there who believe that they can just manage people and build a really good company. I'm not a believer in that necessarily. I'm a believer in like you better know your product better than everybody else. And yes, you're going to have to hire people. You're going to have to hire folks that are smarter than you, that are better than you, that are do stuff that you don't necessarily fully maybe even grasp or understand. Because trust me, my guys can run circles around me, but you have to be involved in your product at all times, and you've got to be intimate with your product at all times. You should always strive to be the best sales guy in the room. And if the CEO is not the best sales guy in the room, then why are you here, right? Because that is one of the most important things that you do as a CEO is be the best sales guy in the room. But I also believe a CEO fundamentally really only owns a couple of things, right? And those things are you own vision, you own risk, right? And then you own the ethos of your organization, right? You own the culture of your organization. Everything else is going to be your people. So choose wisely and do not hesitate to remove somebody who does not meet with one of those three things.
I love it, Jared. Great advice. Congrats once again. That's it for this episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. I'm Steve Taplin. If you enjoyed the show, go ahead and hit subscribe. If you didn't enjoy it, well, we'll just share it with your competitors. Probably help them get into the Hypori software, give them the edge they're looking for. Remember to fail hard, win big, and always build what matters. See you next time.
Thanks, guys.
That's a wrap. Another great episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. Thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun doing this show. I love talking with great tech leaders. As a side note, if you're interested, check out my new book, Fail Hard, Win Big. This is the story of how I built 30 companies, failed on 20, and turned 10 into multi-million-dollar wins. The common thread with all of them was custom software. Also, if you need software development help out there, my company, Sonatify Technology, we deliver world-class software development engineers out of Latin America. We have a solid track record of helping companies launch better products and faster. Thanks again for listening. Appreciate it and appreciate you.